Snow came down that night the way it does when winter wants to be remembered. Slow, deliberate, almost tender. It softened the edges of Briar Hollow, muffled the roads, pressed its cold palm against every window like it was asking to be let in. Inside Martha Hale's diner, warmth gathered in small, honest ways. Steam curling from chipped mugs, the low hum of a heater that had learned to endure, the smell of frying onions clinging to wool coats and tired people. Officer Eli Mercer sat alone at the counter, shoulders rounded forward as if the years had finally decided to sit on him all at once. His badge caught the light when he shifted, but he didn't notice. He was staring at his plate, at food gone lukewarm, fork resting idle in his hand. Outside the window, his patrol car idled, and beside it, barely visible through the falling snow, lay a shape he hadn't let himself look at properly all evening. Martha refilled his coffee without asking. She had learned the art of quiet long ago. The diner was nearly empty now, just a couple of regulars nursing pie and old opinions. The town had folded itself in early, the storm giving everyone permission to go home. Eli finally lifted his fork. That was when the door flew open. Cold rushed in first, sharp and biting, followed by a sound that didn't belong to any grown thing. A boy's voice, raw, cracked with urgency, split the room clean in two. "Don't eat." Time did that strange thing it does when something true arrives uninvited. The fork hovered midair. Coffee stopped halfway to lips. Even the heater seemed to pause, its rattle stuttering. The boy stood framed by the doorway, snow clinging to his hair, his jacket too thin for mercy. His shoes were mismatched, his hands red and trembling, but his eyes, those were steady. Too steady for someone so small. "Don't eat it," he said again, softer now, breath fogging the air. "Please." Someone laughed, sharp and uncomfortable. Another voice muttered something about kids these days. Martha stepped forward, torn between habit and instinct. "Hey now," she said gently, but there was caution in it. "You can't just—" "He's gonna die," the boy blurted, pointing not at the food, but at Eli. "If he eats that, he's gonna die." The room turned. Eyes slid toward Eli, then back to the boy, measuring, judging. The word homeless wasn't spoken, but it hung there anyway, heavy as the snow outside. Eli set the fork down. He had seen fear in all its forms, loud, violent, desperate, but this wasn't that. This was something else. This was certainty. "Son," Eli said, keeping his voice low even, "why don't you come out of the cold?" The boy shook his head hard. "You gotta listen first." Martha hesitated. Rules mattered in a town like this. So did stories, and the way they stuck. She glanced at the others, then back at the boy. "Just a minute," she said. "We don't need trouble." "Trouble's already here," the boy said, and his gaze flicked toward the window, toward the shape in the snow. He smelled it. That did it. Eli turned fully on the stool now, following the boy's line of sight. Outside, the snow thickened, blurring the world, but he could still make out the dark mass by his patrol car. A familiar outline. Too familiar. "What smelled it?" Eli asked. The boy swallowed. "My dog." A murmur rippled through the diner. Someone scoffed. Kids talking nonsense. But Eli was already standing. The door opened again, cold rushing in, but this time Eli stepped into it willingly. The snow creaked under his boots as he crossed the short distance to the patrol car. Kneeling, he brushed ice from the coarse fur of the German shepherd lying beside it. Calder. The name settled in his chest like a bruise pressed too long. Calder, who once leapt fences without thinking. Calder, who had known his commands better than Eli knew himself. Calder, retired, old and lately forgotten. The dog's sides barely moved. Behind him, the boy hovered, arms wrapped around himself. "He wouldn't let me eat," he said quietly. He growled real low. He never does that. He smelled the food, and then he just laid down. Eli's hand trembled as he checked the dog's gums. His breathing, too slow, too shallow. Inside, Martha had already picked up the phone. The word poison drifted through the door like a bad prayer. Someone knocked Eli's plate to the floor. Coffee spilled. Panic tried to take over, but it didn't quite succeed. Not with the boy watching everything, eyes sharp, cataloging who moved and who froze. They carried Calder inside, snow melting into the diner's floor, leaving dark prints behind. Eli shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the dog, without thinking. The boy knelt instantly, pressing his forehead to Calder's, whispering something too soft to hear. "What's your name?" Eli asked. "Jonah." "How long you been out here, Jonah?" Jonah shrugged. "Long enough." No one asked more. Some truths didn't need digging yet. The vet was unreachable. Roads were closing. The storm had decided this was the night things would be tested. Jonah sat at the counter now, a bowl of soup finally in front of him, steam rising like a promise. He didn't eat. He watched Calder instead, one hand resting on the dog's ribcage, counting breaths. Eli stood nearby, feeling the weight of years he hadn't examined. He remembered the day he'd signed the retirement papers, how Calder had sat anyway, waiting for the next command that never came. He had told himself it was kinder this way. He had believed it. Outside, the snow kept falling, patient and relentless. Jonah leaned closer to Calder and whispered, "You gotta stay. You promised." Eli looked down at them, boy and dog, bound by nothing but survival and something deeper than words, and felt the night stretch open, unfinished. Whatever had been broken had not finished breaking yet. Whatever was about to be healed would take time. The storm showed no sign of letting up, and none of them were going anywhere. The night settled in around the diner like a held breath. Snow pressed against the windows, thick enough now to blur the streetlights into pale halos, as if the world outside had agreed to look away. Inside, the air smelled of broth and damp wool, of coffee gone cold, and something sharper, fear mixed with waiting. Calder lay on a stack of coats near the heater, Eli's jacket still wrapped around him, rising and falling in shallow, stubborn motions. Jonah never moved far. He sat cross-legged on the floor, back straight despite the exhaustion etched into him, fingers buried in Calder's fur as though touch alone might anchor the dog to this side of the dark. He counted each breath silently. When one came a second too late, his jaw tightened, but he did not cry. He had learned long ago that tears did not bargain well with fate. Eli watched him from the counter, a mug warming his hands he did not drink from. The badge on his chest felt heavier now, less like authority and more like a question. He had called for help until the radio crackled useless apologies back at him. Roads closed, crews stranded, everyone waiting for the storm to loosen its grip. Waiting had become the night's only skill. A few townspeople lingered, pretending to nurse Pie, while glancing over with thinly veiled curiosity. The whispers came in waves, low and judgmental. A stray kid. An old dog. Bad luck brought in from the cold. Martha shot them looks sharp enough to cut. But gossip has a way of surviving even the iciest stares. Deputy Rowan Pike stepped closer to Eli, voice barely above the hum of the heater. "You did the right thing," he said, though it sounded like something he was still trying to convince himself of. Eli nodded once, eyes never leaving Jonah. Sometimes the right thing looks wrong to people who've never needed it. Rowan followed his gaze, then looked away, unsettled. Outside, another gust rattled the door. Hours stretched thin. At some point, Jonah accepted a piece of bread, chewing carefully, never lifting his hand from Calder's side. Eli crouched beside them, resting his weight on his heels, feeling the ache in his knees, and the ache beneath that, older, quieter. "Calder used to be mine," he said, the words slipping out before he could shape them properly. Jonah looked up, surprised but not accusing. "He still listens to you." Eli shook his head. "I stopped listening to him first." The boy considered that, eyes older than their years. He waited anyway. Something in Eli's chest gave way. Not all at once, but enough to let air back in. Near dawn, when the storm began to tire of itself, Calder's breathing changed. It deepened, steadied, a fragile rhythm finding its way back. Jonah felt it before anyone else. His hand stilled, then tightened, a small gasp escaping him like a secret finally spoken. "He's here," Jonah whispered. "He's staying." Eli leaned in, checking the dog again, this time with a hope he didn't bother to hide. Calder's eyes fluttered open, clouded but aware. His tail thumped once, weak but unmistakable, against the floor. The diner exhaled. Martha crossed herself, without realizing it. Someone laughed softly, embarrassed by relief. Even Rowan smiled, shaking his head as if he'd just witnessed something he wouldn't be able to explain later. When the vet finally arrived, cheeks red from the cold, she confirmed what Eli already knew. The poison had been mild, meant more to scare than to kill, but Calder's age had made it dangerous. Another hour, maybe less, and loyalty alone would not have been enough. Jonah listened quietly as adults spoke over him, words like paperwork and temporary arrangements drifting past. When Eli turned to him, crouching low again, so they were eye to eye, Jonah braced himself. He had learned that this was the moment things usually ended. "You saved a life tonight," Eli said instead. Jonah shrugged, defensive. "He saved mine first." Eli reached up, unclipped his badge, and set it on the counter beside them. The sound it made was small, but final. "I can't promise answers right away," he said, "but I can promise a place to start. Both of you." Jonah searched his face for the lie he expected to find. Finding none, he nodded once, sharp and certain, like someone making a decision he'd been practicing for years. They stepped outside together when the sun finally broke through the clouds, pale and unsure, but present. Snow crunched underfoot, clean and unbroken now. Eli opened the car door, lifting Calder gently into the back seat. Jonah climbed in beside him without being asked, pressing his forehead to the dog's neck, breathing in the smell of fur and safety. As they pulled away, Eli glanced at the diner in the rearview mirror. The town stood quiet, watching, unsure whether to claim what it had just witnessed or let it slip back into rumor. He didn't mind either way. Some things were not meant to be explained to people who never stopped to listen. If you're listening now, if this story found you the way that boy found that door, remember this. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the truest warning. Sometimes loyalty comes to us worn and shivering, asking only to be seen. And sometimes the life you think you're saving is quietly saving you right back. If this whisper stayed with you, if it warmed something you thought winter had taken, stay a little longer. Subscribe to Whispered Tales and walk with us into the stories where forgotten hearts and faithful dogs are never truly lost.